Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the VCL Podcast. I'm Alwynne Gwilt, whisky journalist, and this month we're joined by Russell Bradley, who works behind the scenes in the operations here at VCL. We're going to be delving into all things casks, so letting you know and into the background and nitty-gritty on what happens when we're choosing casks, how they work, and what you need to look out for as a cask investor. Russell, welcome to this month's podcast.
Thanks, Alwynne.
So can you give us and the listeners a little bit more of an intro into your background, where you come from, and really what you do behind the scenes?
So my current role is within the operations team within VCL Vintners. I'm responsible for the maturation and warehousing of our cask inventory. As well as the cask inventory, I also look after the bottling operations for VCL.
So quite a wide remit, and I can imagine quite a lot of casks.
Yes, with over 10,000 casks in our collection, so it's quite a collection.
Yeah, that's incredible. So when you're kind of, I guess, looking at the day-to-day, working between that cask management side and looking at where you'll be sourcing that cask from, I mean, we'll delve into that a little bit throughout the podcast, but can you give a bit of an indication of what's that day-to-day look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, literally every day is different, as you can imagine, with the nature of the role. Due to the amount of casks that we have, and they're literally from almost all distilleries across Scotland. They're stored across the width and breadth of Scotland as well. So ensuring that every cask gets the right attention to detail and ongoing maintenance takes quite a lot of planning. So from the younger side of the scale, we have contract distillings that we do. So that involves taking in a few hundred casks every month. There's a lot of kind of data checks and integrity checks that go on. We then upload them onto our digital portfolio platform.
Wow.
So, and then we also, for casks that are 15 years and older, we recommend that we do a regauge.
Okay.
So that means there's a lot of to and fro with a lot of warehouses across the country to instigate that and then interrogate and study the results to make sure that the investments are performing as they should. Yeah,
absolutely. So you mentioned regauge this just then. There's obviously a lot of terminology out there in the whiskey industry, and certainly on the cask management side. What can you maybe explain a little bit about what regauging is, and also there's RLA, there's OLA. What are all these words and terms that get thrown out?
Yeah, we do like abbreviations. So a regauge, I mean, I guess the simplest definition is it's to check what's inside the cask. Okay. In its simplest form. There are two methods of doing a regauge. The first step is we draw a sample from the cask, just a small sample, around about 100 mils. We then test that for the ABV to get the strength of the liquid. Next, we need to check the actual volume of liquid within the cask. So this is where the two different methods comes in. The most accurate way to do it is we weigh the full cask. We then empty the cask, weigh it again, and then by subtracting the two figures, we can calculate the volume in there. So the next stage is where what we call the RLA, which is the regauged litres of alcohol.
Regauged litres of alcohol, okay.
Yes, regauged litres of alcohol. So by doing this, we take the volume, we do a calculation between that and the strength of the liquid, and it gives us our RLA factor. So for example, if there was 200 bulk litres in a cask and it was at 50% ABV, 200 times 50% would be 100 RLA.
Right, okay.
And that is the kind of measurement that we judge the casks on. Okay.
And when that comes to real term translation, is that important? Is it important for cask investors to understand or to know what these terms are when it comes to their casks?
It's very important for me. The actual investors themselves, some people like to know and understand this. At the end of the day, that's what myself and the operations team are there for, to manage. So people, I mean, I guess it depends how interested the people are, but It's certainly from my point of view in operations, it's a very important tool because essentially your cask lies in a warehouse for many, many years, and the only way of doing the health check on that cask is to do the regauge.
Right, to see how it's changing from year to year or
Yeah,
every
so
couple
from
of
year
years.
to year. So the other abbreviation that you may hear is OLA,
Yeah,
which stands for original litres of alcohol.
original litres of alcohol. Yeah.
So that is essentially the same process, but
Okay.
it's done when the cask is first filled. So
Right,
when
okay.
just at distillation stage.
Yep.
So once we do the first regauge, which we recommend at 15 years,
Yep.
we can compare the two results to understand how much spirit has been lost in there, what's the maturation losses, and also check against industry standards
Right.
to see how we think it's performing.
Yeah. And if you had a cask come in that you had purchased that was already filled or a few years of age already, would you then almost have like a tracing line to know what the OLA was when it was first filled? Like, is it like, does it have a passport? Is it kind of almost as it goes along its journey, or?
Really good question. To be honest, it all really depends on the previous owners,
Right, okay.
and the logbooks and what data's been kept. Generally, if you're buying a cask that's say under 15 years, it probably won't have been regauged
Okay.
at that stage, unless someone has insisted on doing so. So it would probably be the OLA.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, someone might have done a regauge, in which case we then have RLA, which would be more accurate.
Yeah, just to show you how it's actually changed over
Yes.
that time.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. So there's a lot of factors you need to
There is
keep in
a
mind.
lot of factors in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the term that is probably used most often, and I suppose is almost worked into these numbers, is angel share. We hear that term a lot. I think even if you were just a normal pedestrian walking down the street, maybe not everybody, but I think you could probably survey people and they might have heard that term potentially used, if not from a whiskey perspective. Maybe they've seen the film of the same name.
Yeah.
And how does angel share fit in with RLA and OLA, and where does it play a part?
So the angel share is a term that's kind of widely used across the industry, as you mentioned. What that essentially is, it's how we describe the losses, the maturation losses
Right.
within the cask. When we talk about losses, it can concern people because we don't like to lose things, but it's part of the maturation process.
Okay.
That's why we accept it, but we just try to make sure it's managed as best we can.
Yeah.
So whiskey by law Scotch whiskey needs to mature in oak casks.
Yep.
Because oak is porous, oxygen essentially travels in and out of the cask,
Okay.
resulting in evaporation, loss of strength, loss of bulk liquid,
Yep.
And that's what we term the angel share. So we like to keep the angels happy, but not too happy.
Not too happy. Yeah, is that the fine balance
Yes.
of yeah. I think I heard the term once that there's if you were to travel through Speyside, it would just be a dense cloud of happy angels.
Yes.
Because in the Speyside region, there's just so much whiskey evaporation happening at any one point in time. So thanks so much, Russell, for going through all of those terms. Obviously, when it comes to regauging, so you're going to be doing that on older casks you were mentioning. So definitely on those casks that are 15 years of age and over. At that point in time, is there opportunity then for clients to get samples and to taste and see where that liquid is at that point?
Yes, absolutely. The regauge process is also a great opportunity to draw that sample from the cask. Because the cask is being moved and it's being handled at that stage, it is the time to do it. So we do offer clients the chance of getting a sample, typically 200 millilitres, which can be drawn and they get to sample and enjoy their investment.
See how it's tasting.
Yes,
It's the best part of whiskey.
Exactly. Unfortunately, at that point, UK duty and VAT come into play,
Yes.
so we do always pay that on our samples.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good opportunity.
Fantastic. And can you give a bit more insight into old and rare casks and versus newer ones, and how that also works from the client perspective?
Yeah, so VCL, kind of internally, we class any cask over 20 years of age as a rare cask.
Okay.
So what we what we do differently with rare casks is we monitor them like we do all our casks, but we do regauges on a 12-month loop, essentially.
So much more frequently.
Yeah, so on the cask's birthday, essentially, there or thereabouts, we would do a regauge. We'll compare it to the results from 12 months before. And at some stage, I may give the recommendation that this cask is ready to be bottled.
Okay. And that will be based on flavour, ABV, a whole host of things?
Yeah, I mean, ABV is certainly a key factor because we need to ensure it's above 40%.
Yeah.
Or it might just be that you're down to 100 bottles.
Right, left in the cask. Yeah.
Or it could just be an exceptional quality cask that's good time to bottle.
Yeah, fantastic. And on that note, what are some of those exit strategies for clients when they realize that, okay, their cask is at peak point? Where do they go next?
So I'll talk you through the bottling options we have as an exit strategy. So we offer, there's two ways essentially that we can do it. We can do it so that we arrange the bottling on behalf of the clients, and the client will own the bottles at the end, either to keep, enjoy with friends, onward sale, future investment, or alternatively we offer a managed bottling service where VCL will buy the cask back from the client at an agreed price, and we will bottle the cask under VCL.
Right, okay.
The advantage to the client of the latter option is they can take advantage of the tax-free investment because once we bottle it, it is then liable for tax.
For the taxes. So at the point at which if they were to choose that option and say, look, we just want you to take the liquid back, it's in your hands, anything that they gain from that will be, the tax won't have come into play at that point in time because it doesn't affect duty, you're saying, until it goes in the bottle.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's, so two very, very different options. I guess it very much comes down to the client and what they're looking to get out of that investment.
It comes down to the client, whether they've bought the cask with the intention of always bottling the cask, or it might just purely be an investment on financial terms. So once we do go to bottle, we offer 3 different packaging ranges for bottling. So it ranges from standard bottles to more premium bottles, gift cartons, rigid boxes, all the way through to handmade solid oak presentation boxes.
Wow.
So there's something in there for every style and every budget.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I'll work with the client. They can be as hands-on or as hands-off as they wish, to design all the packaging, make sure they're happy with everything, all the way through to attending the bottling. On the day, final quality inspections, it's fully overseen by myself.
Yeah, fantastic. So very hands-on approach to the whole experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's quite a number of things, obviously, as you said, you need to keep an eye on. What are some of the most interesting facets you find about this work that you're doing from the cask management side?
From the cask management side, and probably one thing that VCL is fairly unique in, is because we have casks from Highland, Speyside, Lowland, Campbelltown, Islay, literally all the regions, across so many distilleries, stored in so many warehouses. Once we gather the regauge data, we have quite a unique set of data that allows us to learn a lot about the maturation process. And also things that can affect the maturation process. So one example would be climate. That can be a big part of it. So if you look at American bourbon whiskey, for example, if we use Kentucky as an example, it's hot climate, so they get a lot of water evaporation, which means
more angel share.
So more angel share. So the more water evaporates, the more alcohol you're left with. So you end up with less liquid but a higher strength.
Right. Yes.
In comparison, the good old Scottish weather is very good for whiskey maturation because the temperatures are lower. So we get lower shares, which means that we can age casks for the periods of time that we do.
Right, so you've got that longer time because the liquid is actually not escaping from the cask as quickly. Therefore, you can keep it in the cask for a longer period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It stays in because one of the factors of Scotch whisky is it needs to be minimum 40% volume.
Yeah.
So that's one of the key attributes we are looking at, is if a cask is getting into the low 40s. It's something that we're going to have to monitor and probably look to bottle the cask in the near future.
And do you notice many differentiations between the regions, or is the data still too kind of, you're still gathering it?
I mean, we're still gathering it. To be honest, it's a lot of whisky maturation is still unknown. And it's a science that's still being experimented. You can literally fill 2 casks on the same day, install them in the same warehouse, and have 2 different results.
Yeah.
Some of it we understand, some of it we don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's just part of what makes it interesting.
A little bit of magic.
Yes.
Now you talk about, obviously we're talking a lot about casks, but then casks are not just casks, as you say, they are all different. Can you explain a little bit about the difference between the types of casks? So sometimes we'll hear terminology like butts or hogsheads or, American standard or things like that. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about what those terms mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are quite a few different sizes of casks. The 3 most common ones that you mention are a standard barrel, which is around 200 litres capacity. We have the hogshead, which is a bit larger, about 240 litres, and then going up to a butt, which is huge. Those can hold up to 500 litres of alcohol. So if you think a butt compared to a 200 barrel, it's almost 2.5 times the size.
And does that affect the evaporation at all? So if you were investing in a sherry butt or versus an American standard barrel or a hogshead, would the evaporation change because the surface area is different in the cask?
I would say the evaporation would change. What you might find is the wood can impart more in terms of flavour and colour. And say a smaller barrel, because there's more contact area for the volume of liquid. But I wouldn't say I've noticed any direct linked to cask size and maturation loss.
Right, okay. But flavour is an important part. Can you explain a little bit about the differences, I suppose, that you would find in, say, if you bought a cask that had previously held bourbon versus a cask that maybe is made from European oak and previously held sherry?
Yeah, this is for me where it gets really, really fascinating because there is so many options out there. So I mean, the vast majority of Scotch whisky is filled into ex-American bourbon barrels. Because American bourbon, you can only use a barrel once. What that does is it feeds the Scotch whisky industry with barrels that we can use. There are lots of other different types of barrels, and it's basically about what liquid was previously in the barrel. So you mentioned sherry. Sherry is probably the most common alternative wood that we use. So a cask that's previously held sherry, it's been emptied and then it's been filled with Scotch. So there's kind of 2 different ways we can do this. We can take the cask and we can fill it with new make. So a sherry cask filled with new make, and we would call that sherry cask matured. Because it's spent the full maturation period. Alternatively, we can take a cask that's already aged for, say, 10 years in American bourbon, and we can transfer it into a sherry cask or another type. We would refer that as a sherry cask finish. So what that do is you still get the sherry effect. But essentially, the longer you keep it in there, the more effect.
The more impact it's going to have. So you could do, so a cask finish might only be a short period of time.
I would say probably minimum 6 months you would be looking at for a finish.
A minimum of 6 months.
Minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, every cask is different, but I would probably sample it after 6 months.
And do you do that in terms of a style? Would you do that at VCL, or would you be buying casks which might have been in American oak and then moved into a sherry cask afterwards?
We do both.
You do both, okay.
So sometimes we'll have casks and we might think that particular whisky, perhaps with a view to bottling in the near future, we might transfer it into a sherry cask, for example. But there, I mean, there's lots of other different casks out there, and we've actually got quite a lot of casks that we've filled as new make spirit.
Yep.
We've got Calvados brandy casks.
That was going to be my next question, actually, what other fun casks are hiding in the warehouses at VCL?
Yes, I mean, we've got lots in terms of new make. We've done sherry.
Yep.
As the almost the standard one.
Yep.
We've got brandy casks such as Calvados.
Mm-hmm.
We have ex-rum casks.
And is that from a new make stage or from a cask finish?
From both.
Both.
To be honest, we've got quite a lot from new make, and we've got a few parcels of casks as aged spirit. So those will be not too far off sampling stage.
Okay. All right.
Now, so I look forward to that.
Nice. I can imagine any of them at the moment that are topping the list. I can imagine a nice ex Calvados cask is going to be very tasty. But yes. I'm a big fan of ex rum casks as well, so I don't know if you've got one that's.
I think the Calvados one will be interesting.
Mm-hmm,
It'll be interesting. I also think we've got some red wine casks.
Okay.
As well, which from casks that I've tried in the past they give a lovely rich colour to them, and so it's not all about the flavour. There's different casks and part of the different colours.
And those wine casks, are you able to reveal, are they Australian, are they French, are they anything?
I'm not able to reveal, unfortunately, other than red wine casks.
Have to wait and see what they look like, and if they're ready, if they're able to be bottled, get a taste of them.
Yes, we'll get a sample in the
post. So the world of whiskey, obviously, it's been in a fascinating place, a real period of growth over the last 10 to 15 years. In terms of the actually getting a hold of casks, you're obviously filling things from new make, which is super interesting because you get the control right from the very beginning. But are you finding it's more difficult to actually get a hold of interesting casks if they are, say, being bought in at already a certain age? So they've already been being matured by someone else, by another third party.
At VCL, they've built up a really good reputation, and they've got long-standing relationships with distillers as well as other whisky contacts. So we do regularly get offered some quite unique and quite interesting casks. Probably as good an example in recent weeks was some kind of high-aged Macallan casks.
Fantastic,
that we've been offered, and we have taken up the offer.
So
in today's climate, that's as interesting as things get.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of interesting parcels. Some of it for their age. Some of it might be distilleries that have closed their doors. It might be a unique cask finish, a trial cask that was never used. So it's lots of interesting ones.
So lots out there, lots behind the scenes in the warehouses, lots that you also, from an operations perspective, must be a bit of a playground and getting a chance to experience all these casks and keep track of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've inherited, obviously the VCL's been going a long time. I've inherited a lot of these amazing casks. I do have some ideas. One I would love to try would be like a dessert wine cask.
Okay. So like a Madeira style?
Yeah, something along those, maybe on an unpeated lowland Speyside, something like that could be really nice.
Fantastic. And I mean, it sounds amazing. I would love to be spending all my time in warehouses and tasting whiskey, but I'm sure there are challenges as well. Are there any tricky things in terms of the what happens behind the scenes, or is it just all rainbows and lollipops?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that's been in a bonded warehouse, what you see is what you get.
Yeah. Essentially,
they're large, they're cold, they're floor to ceiling, full of whiskey casks. So I mean, absolutely. I've not experienced any leakers in my time here, thankfully. You do hear the stories, but ultimately they will happen from time to time. But hence why we put the care and attention into looking after the casks. So we can catch these at an early stage.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like the casks behind the scenes are in very good hands.
Thank you.
No doubt some exciting things for investors and for palates moving forwards into the future.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, Russell, thank you so much. It's been super interesting hearing a bit more and getting a bit more insight into what happens behind the scenes in the world of cask and cask management, and definitely looking forward to seeing some of the things that you experiment with and bring to the fore and bottle, but also I'm sure the investors are as well. So thank you so much for chatting with us and giving us a bit more insight into everything.
No problem, my pleasure.